Welcome to the Essence of Liberty podcast. This is the horsemanship podcast where we discuss all things liberty to help you understand, connect, communicate, and play with your horse in a gentle, subtle, and force-free way. We'll get a bit nerdy about equine psychology and learning theory to understand the science behind it all. And we'll also dive into how to motivate your horse, ways to strengthen your relationship, solving those common problems, and how to use liberty as a way to build your horse up physically, mentally, and emotionally, all in half an hour or less. I'm Dr. Nadine Lindblom, former equine veterinarian, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this journey as a student of the horse. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Essence of Liberty podcast. It's been a little while since I last released a podcast. It's been since April and it is the end of September now. And yeah, I'm really excited to be back. There's been a lot that has happened since the last couple of episodes. There's been a Europe tour and there's been a lot of learning on my part. There's been just so much going on in terms of lessons and creating new content and me kind of trying to stay on top of things because everything is getting really, really busy, which I'm so excited about. But also, it's been a lot, so I have fallen a little bit behind on podcasts, but I'm very excited now to be back with weekly episodes. So I hope you've all been well, and I'm very excited to bring this episode to you, which is going to be about why I reward my horses for doing absolutely nothing. And this is so incredibly important, and it raises a fair few eyebrows, especially when my students come to me and they've never used positive reinforcement before, or food rewards before, or at least not in this way. And the very first thing I do is that I start rewarding their horse, or I encourage, or I'm guiding them through to start rewarding their horse for doing absolutely nothing. And this feels really counterintuitive for us because positive reinforcement is, and especially food rewards, is such a powerful motivator. It's like gold, right? It kind of feels like they should only get a food reward if they have done something that is like above and beyond and absolutely incredible, and you really want to reinforce that moment really strongly. And yes, definitely that has a lot of merit behind that type of thinking. But the thing is, when you're using positive reinforcement and food rewards in a very systematic way, where that is the main source of motivation throughout the training session, where you're not relying as much on anything aversive, you are encouraging your horse to move towards a reward instead of moving away from something that he potentially finds a little bit scary or uncomfortable or is threatening that it is going to get uncomfortable. And the thing is that when you start then using food rewards as the main source of motivation, we are quite powerfully activating the horse's seeking system. And the normal way for horses to respond when we start working in this way, when we start bringing in food into the training session, is that the horse goes, ooh, this is pretty exciting. I need to go towards the food. I need to find the food. And he starts coming towards you and he starts sniffing his pockets. He starts sniffing your pockets. And some horses might even get a little bit sort of demanding and forceful about it and get a little bit frustrated because they feel like, well, I can smell all this food, but you are preventing me from having it. And they can get a little bit angry about that, which is really fair enough. And this is where a lot of people then go, no, this is not working for me because my horse is getting pushy, he's getting angry, he's getting frustrated, he's all over me, and he can't focus on what I'm asking him to do because he's too focused on trying to get the food. And this is where they then put the food away and they say, this doesn't work for us. And what we have to keep in mind is that horses have evolved for millions of years, and that's the same with any animal, to go towards the food. And like if they smell food, their entire sensory system is saying, I smell food, that smells good, let's go towards it. So the horse is not doing anything wrong by trying to go towards the food. And it can feel like he's being rude or that he's, just getting too fixated, but he's just doing what a horse is supposed to do. And what we then have to do is show him that there's other ways to get the food. There's other ways to be around the food. And when horses have not learned to learn in this way, there's a process involved in order to teach them how to be and how to learn in this particular way. And we have to take the time to set a foundation and teach them this and not just expect them to be perfect from the very beginning. So what I like to do here in the beginning is that I teach my horses that the food will come to them and that they don't have to expend any kind of energy on actually trying to go towards the food, because I'll bring it to them like on a platter. And it's a very counterintuitive thing for a horse. It's very, very weird for the food to just be delivered for them, because in nature they always have to obtain their food in some particular way. So what we do then is teach the horse that when he does nothing and when he just settles and when he is quiet, the food will be then delivered straight to his mouth. He doesn't have to turn, he doesn't have to do anything. He can just stand there and allow the food to come to him. And this is also the first part of teaching our horses to match our energy. So what we want in the future is for the horse to know that when we stop and when we do nothing, he can match us and he can stop and do nothing. And when we then bring our energy up and our intention up and say, hey, we're going to do something, he can then match us and do something. Because the other problem that people run into is that when they start working with food rewards is that they walk up to their horse or they start their training session and then the horse gets really excited and he starts to offer every single trick in his book, everything he learns. He's like, is it this? Is it this? What do you want? Like, what is it? And then it can get to this point where it's just like, no, can you just stop? Like, I'm not ready yet. And it gets overwhelming for the human. It gets overwhelming for the horse. It gets frustrating for the human. It gets frustrating for the horse. And it's just not a nice experience eventually if your energies are not matching. So I love that kind of motivation and that excitement in my horses where they're just like, oh, okay, we're training and I'm excited and they're really listening and they're matching me really well. But I don't want that. I don't want there to be a mismatch in our energy where I go in and I'm calm and I just want to hang out and my horse is like, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. It's the mismatch in energies that become frustrating. Okay, it's not necessarily that we don't want that motivation. It's just when we don't want it, right? So it's when there's a mismatch in energy. So the very, very first thing that we want to teach the horses is that when I stand here and I do absolutely nothing and there is no cue, that is your cue to stand there and do absolutely nothing. And you will still be reinforced for that. If you're not reinforcing the horses for doing nothing and for standing quietly and patiently waiting, of course they're going to try to do something, right? So it's not wrong if they're not being reinforced for doing nothing. They're going to be like, hey, well, can't we get going and do something? This is really, really important. And the thing that happens is that you may think that, well, if I'm rewarding him for doing nothing and he knows he's going to be rewarded for doing absolutely nothing, isn't he then going to just do nothing like all the time? Why would he want to do something if he knows that he's going to be rewarded for doing nothing? And that's a very, very fair point as well. However, I encourage you not to think about it in a way where you're rewarding your horse for not doing anything for you. If you really think about it, if you think about the fact that his entire body is saying go towards the food, his entire sensory system is saying go towards the food, go towards the food. Being able to know that the food is there and being able to have the kind of self-control and emotional control to stand and do nothing is a really, really big deal. We look at it and think, oh, he's just rewarded for not doing anything. But in reality, he's doing a thing that is an incredibly big deal for a horse. He smells the food and he has to say, no, I'm going to not follow my nervous system in this moment and I'm going to just stand and match you and do nothing. It's a big thing for them to be able to do, especially if it's a really food motivated horse. Try not to, I know that I'm saying I'm rewarding the horses for doing nothing, but try not to think of it as that they're not doing anything for the food reward, because they are doing something for the food reward and it's something that is incredibly challenging for some horses. All right. Now, with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about how you would go about teaching your horse to do this. The very first thing with this is to set up for success. Don't start this when he is really hungry and have a very high value food reward. So that's the worst type of situation where you could start this with, is that it's morning and he's waiting for his food and you think, before I give him his breakfast, I want to train. Then you maybe bring him out of the paddock, away from the herd, which for any horse does have an element of stress. Even if they do act really calm, being taken away from the herd is always going to be mildly stressful. And then you are perhaps interrupting the routine a little bit. He was expecting to get fed. He's really hungry because he's got, maybe he hasn't had any food for a few hours. And then you try doing this exercise with really high value food reward, which examples of that would be carrots or licorice or some kind of pellet that is very palatable, so tasty, something that is high value in accordance to your horse. And your horse gets to pick here what is high value and what is not, even though we think that a particular thing isn't high value. If he is acting very excited around it, then he believes it is high value. So you have to let him tell you. The very first thing is to set up for success. You want to pick a time when he is already calm, when he is already fed, and then have a low value food reward that ideally requires a high amount of chewing. So the thing that I like to use is loosened cubes, which is compressed hay or like compressed chaff. And they come in like kind of big cubes that are probably, they kind of vary, but average maybe 2 centimeter cubes, like on either side. And you can then break them up into little biscuits. You want to, if you're using those, they can be a choke hazard. So you don't want to be giving the gigantic cubes that like how they come in the bag. You want to take some time to break them up. I tend to break them into their biscuits. They're like miniature hay bales, so they have biscuits inside them, and you can break them into their individual biscuits and then break them in half again. So you end up with like a bag of chunky chaff, like chunks, like small chunks. And yeah, you don't want to be giving the gigantic cubes, but having those chunks does increase the chewing time. And when your horse has to chew, you have more opportunities to reward him for being still and present and not trying to go towards the food because he's busy chewing. And it's really, really handy. If you use something that's like a small piece of carrot or like a couple of pellets at a time, he's going to like take that and then he's going to be excited for the next one. And the whole exercise is going to go really quickly and it's going to become overwhelming. And if you are new to this type of training, it's going to be much harder for you to get organized and reset and to get the timing right because your horse is moving faster than you. So you want to use something that slows him down. And the loosened cubes are really good for this. The other option is to use loosened pellets, because they also tend to be quite, they're not as exciting, or just not even loosen. Loosen can be too exciting for some horses. You can experiment with it, find what works for your horse. But something that requires a lot of chewing, you can even use chaff or something like that. Just boring. Something that's boring, something that he's used to and that he's not hungry. And then you're going to find a moment where he is simply doing nothing. So you're going to go in, you're going to do nothing with your body language. You're just going to stand, you're going to be present, you're going to take a breath. And the split second when he moves away from the food and ideally puts his head in front of his chest and has a split second of doing nothing or settling or being quiet, then you're going to use your marker signal and you're going to follow it up with a food reward. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about marker signals, then there's an episode about bridge signals, which is really, really good to listen to before you try this. You really need to understand the marker signal and why it's important. So go back and listen to that exercise, to that episode. And yeah, you're just going to repeat that. You're going to just keep the food coming. So you're going to wait for him to have this moment where he settles, or when he stands with his head in front of his chest, and then you're going to reach out to him and give him the food reward. Don't take the food out of your waist bag or whatever it is that you're using and kind of give it to him close to your body. You want to make sure that you're reaching out and delivering the food basically straight in front of his chest. So horses are different when you start this. Some horses are already kind of settled and you have a lot of opportunities. If your horse is really busy, as soon as he smells the food and he's just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, you want to be really, really, your criteria is really low. So as soon as he moves away from you, as soon as he does anything other than trying to get towards the food, you're going to use your marker signal and reward that, so that you start building a reinforcement history of him just being away from the food. And then you gradually start to increase the duration. But if your horse is really excited about this, then you want to make it really, really easy for him in the beginning. And for any horse, you want to make it really easy. But of course, with some horses that are more chill and more quiet, you can wait for them to be a little bit more still. You alter it a little bit according to the horse. But if you're new to this, just reward for any tiny, tiny little try. Then the important thing is to not try to drill this over and over and over and over again in the one session, so that it becomes a really long session. Short and well done sessions are much more powerful than really long sessions. So you can go in, do 5 minutes, do 10 minutes, done. End on a good note, end when he's relaxed, and finish there. And what all of this is doing is just building a base layer. It's building a foundation to how your horse can be and what state of mind he can be in and what emotional state he can be in when there's food rewards around. So that's the beginning of it, though. And you'll do this for a little while, where you're just standing next to your horse and you're just rewarding them for staying in their own space and doing nothing. And then you gradually increase the duration, so that you are waiting for a little bit longer periods of time. And then you extend it to the point where you can give him a pat on the neck and run your hands all over his back and move around him a little bit. And he's just happy to stand there and wait for you to then mark and deliver the food reward to him. As long as your energy is saying, well, we're not doing anything, we're just hanging out, I'm just giving you a pat, I'm giving you a scratch, I'm just running my hands all over you, and my energy is saying that we're not doing anything at all, that should become very easy over time to be able to go into this state where you just hang out and you just chill. And he is very sure that that is also a way where he can earn a reinforcement. If you're only rewarding for him for doing something, he's going to be standing there and be like, oh, like I can't wait to do something. I'm waiting for you to give me a cue. I'm waiting for us to do something. Or he's going to take the liberty to start offering you the stuff anyway. So it's just really important. Like I don't mind the horses being in a state where they are excited and they're wanting to offer, but only when I am in a state where we're doing something. When I bring my energy up and I said, yeah, okay, we're doing something, they go, yeah, okay, what are we doing? I'm ready. And then of course they're listening to my cues, and they'll use that as guidance as to what to do next. But if I'm doing absolutely nothing, I see it as a little bit of a problem if the horses are then being like, let's do something, let's do something, let's do something, if my energy isn't matching that. So I get a lot of questions where people are like, well, don't you, because I like walk along the fence line sometimes, and the horses come up and they're offering their piafs and canter transition, Spanish walk and things like that. And I don't mind that at all, because I'm talking to them and I have this intention where I'm like, yeah, we're doing something. Like I'm with you and we're doing this thing, and I'm encouraging them as well. I don't mind that at all. But I do mind if I am standing and doing nothing and my horse is like, hello, like, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? That's a problem. But as long as they're matching my energy, I don't see it as a problem. All right. I hope that gives you a little bit of food for thought, and I hope that clears up perhaps a few questions that you've had around this topic of the horses offering different behaviors, of rewarding your horse for doing nothing, and if they will then think that, doing nothing is their way to get a reinforcement. I hope it gives you a little bit of an idea of how to go about this, how to start and introduce your horse to this concept of having food rewards around, because food rewards are really, really incredible and really powerful if you are using them strategically, and if you're using them well, and if you're setting your horse up really well, and you're not skipping the foundation. That's the biggest mistake people make, is that they just skip the foundation because it's not as exciting as doing the fancy stuff. But I promise you that if you skip the foundation, you will have problems with the fancy stuff. And in order to fix those problems that you're running into with the fancy stuff, you need to go back and fix the holes in the foundation. I have a lot of students come that are working on very advanced liberty movements. And 90% of the time, we will go back to basics because there was some kind of foundation that was missed somewhere along the track. And once that's fixed, then the fancy stuff or the advanced thing or the challenge that they're running into is suddenly just disappeared. They say that beginners work on intermediate exercises, and intermediate people work on advanced exercises, but the advanced people work on the basics. And that's the thing, like it always, always, always comes back to the basics. And this idea of having stillness and quietness and your horse being able to match you and being okay with just hanging out and doing nothing and knowing that they will still be reinforced for that is one of the very, very important basics. All right, that is it from me for this episode, and I will see you next week for another one. All right, bye for now.